Okay, League of Women Voters, Janet Brennan.
Here.
And alternate Howard Fosler.
Here.
Salinas Taxpayer Association, Kevin Dayton.
Here.
Do we have alternate Rick Giffen? Monterey Peninsula Taxpayers Association, Tom Raleigh.
Here.
Alternate Rick Hewer.
Here.
Do we have Senior Disabled, Kayla Boomba? Cinelas Valley Chamber of Commerce, John Hoop.
Here.
Monterey Peninsula Chamber of Commerce, Jonathan Geisler.
Here.
Habitat Preservation, Scott Waltz.
Here.
Hospitality, Barbara Meister.
Here.
Agriculture, Norm Groot.
Here.
And alternate Paul Arnado.
Here.
Education, Joshua Jorn. South County Representative, Paula Getzelman. Paula,
Here.
do we have alternate Carol Kenyon? No. Latino Organization, Chris Barrera.
Here.
North County Representative, Ron Rader. Pedestrian Representative, Lori Ivy.
Here.
Youth Representative, Natalie Olivas.
Here.
Construction Representative, Sean Hebert.
Here.
And alternate Keith Severson.
Good afternoon.
Did I miss anyone?
Yes, Maria, alternates for hospitality and I think pedestrian, perhaps. I think there were some names.
Oh,
not
Sam
called.
Teal? Is Sam Teal here?
No, Jonathan, Monica is here.
Oh, Monica.
Yeah, Monterey Peninsula Chamber of
Chamber of
Commerce,
Commerce.
Monica Well.
Monterey County.
Chamber of Commerce, Monterey Peninsula.
Oh, okay, Monica, like, oh, okay, alternate, sorry. Anyone else? Who was the other one? Teresa?
I think that's it.
Okay. Yes, we have a quorum.
All right. Thank you, Maria. Appreciate it. And welcome, everybody. It's good to see you again in these tiny little boxes on my screen, but would be even better when we can meet live and in person, which is in our future, it looks like. So I suppose we'll talk about that later in the meeting. Let's begin the meeting with public comments. Is there any member of the public who has joined us today? You have an opportunity to address any item that's not on the agenda within the jurisdiction of the Measure X Oversight Committee. Is there any member of the public with us today that would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, I'll conclude with public comments. Then let's take a look at our consent agenda, and on the consent agenda is our minutes from our February 16th meeting. And I know somebody read them carefully because they provided a lot of edits to Teresa, which she made and sent out those corrected minutes just, I believe, last week. Any discussion of the minutes?
I'll move to approve those minutes.
Thank you, Kevin. Is there a second?
I'll second if we need that.
All right, thank you, Sean. Kevin has moved and Sean has seconded. Any further discussion? If not, please signify your approval of the minutes by just raising your hand on the screen. We're good. All right, thank you very much. Consent agenda is approved. Then we've got two items on our regular agenda today. The first is to receive a presentation on the Measure X third year audit, of which several of us spent some time working on, as well as the Measure X annual report. And so Teresa, you're going to give us that overview presentation, is that correct?
I was going to start it, Barbara, and then I can introduce you, who's going to give the audit results. So forgive me for just a second. Let me pull up the annual report. As you all may recall, each year this committee needs to create and do an audit of the Measure X expenditures and report back to the public and to our board of directors. So the first step in that process was the formation of the audit subcommittee. They met last year. The committee was formed in the fall of last year, and then they met at the beginning of this year, did the audit. And so they're reporting out to you the results of that. That report goes inside of the TAMSI annual report that we do each year. So forgive me for a second, because I did not pull that up. So let me see if I can pull up that document, because the only thing that I have provided is the actual TAMSI, the audit that you all did. So hold on just a second. Let me pull that up, and then I can share that with you. So hold on. So one of the things that we're excited about for this annual report is that our cover is actually our staff member, Maria, who is here doing as part of this committee. Her family was on the cover of our annual report. So let me pull it up here and show it to you. And then let me share screen. So this is the cover of this year's annual report, and it's called Moving Forward. And as you can see here, this is Maria and her lovely family who are on the cover. And you are getting a sneak view preview, so you're actually seeing this before it goes to our board and before it actually goes out to the public. We're in the process of printing it right now, sending it to the mailbox, the post office in San Jose, and then this is going to go out to all of the public. So the first page talks about TAMSI, who we are, and looking back on the last year. And then it talks about presentation. Every community has representation on our board. So this is what the first page looks like. And then the second page goes into the financials, and it's broken down into what the TAMSI funds were for the year and expenditures. And then it breaks out Measure X funding, what the revenues were and what the expenses were during this past year. The next page talks about planning, funding, and building, and it talks about the projects and the progress that's been made. So it's been 4 years since the public voted to support Measure X. So we're really pleased to report out that over this past 4 years, it's been a total of $114.9 million that came back into our community for Measure X funding. And as you all know, 60% of that goes back to the cities and the counties to fix potholes and to make road repairs. And then the other 40% comes back to TAMSI for regional projects. So this gives reports out the progress that's been made on each of these projects as we move forward. So we've talked about the Fort Ord Regional Trail and Greenway, the King City Maintenance Facility, the Engine Parkway Widening and Roundabouts Project, the Highway 1 Rapid Bus Corridor Project, the Salinas Station Improvements Project, which we had a ribbon cutting for that first phase of the project just early this year. The State Route 156 Castroville Boulevard Interchange Project. And then also 101 south of Salinas Safety Improvements, and then Highway 68. And then we talk about one of our programs, the Safe Route to Schools program. Again, this is Maria's youngest daughter, so we're very happy to showcase some of our family members. And then this is where the annual audit comes in from this committee. And so Barbara, I'm going to turn this over to you if you want to talk about the process that you all went through to conduct the audit and then give them the results of that. And again, this is coming to this committee, and then it's going to go to our board for presentation at the end of this month.
Great. All right. Thanks, Teresa. So first, before I start, I want to acknowledge the folks that were on the audit subcommittee. Paula Getzelman chaired the committee, and then Rick Hoyer, and then Kevin Dayton. And am I missing anybody, Paula and myself? I think it was just the four of us, correct?
That's it.
Yeah.
I think that's it, Barbara.
Okay, good. And so we met, I think, twice. It was fairly straightforward. But as Teresa said, and if you could scroll down while you've got your share screen there, Teresa, to that middle part there. One of our main jobs is to make sure that that 60% that goes to the local jurisdictions is meeting its targets, is being spent properly and according to Measure X authority. And so we were reviewing the reports back on the annual compliance, and I'll share that with you. Our job is then to make any recommendations, and then that is to go on to the board of directors. So if you could scroll down some more there. And this year, we're pretty happy to see that we had only one city out of compliance. And if you could share that table, and that was Sand City. Oh, hold on, let's focus on the headline there, the compliance reports. So in each case, you'll see the funds that were received that went from the Measure X pool to each of the jurisdictions, including the county. Were their reports on time? Did they complete their annual compliance report? Did they maintain effort? And for those of you who might be new to the committee, how I understand that reference is that you can't just take your Measure X money and substitute it for your usual city budget on transportation and roads. You have to maintain your ongoing effort, and Measure X monies are in addition to your ongoing transportation and road repair budget. Does that make sense, Teresa? Did I cover that in a simple way? So we want to make sure, are they using these added dollars, not using these dollars to substitute for what they otherwise should be doing to maintain their streets and roads? So that's what that question refers to. The 5-year program of projects, I forget, they're supposed to outline their future work. Is that correct, Teresa?
Their capital improvements for projects, yes, to identify which projects are going to be funded.
Yeah, tell us ahead of time, where are you going with those fundings? Did they need to complete an independent audit of those expenditures? And they also need to share with us their pavement condition report. And by that essentially means how well are your streets holding up? And there's a whole interesting science behind that, which if you really want to geek out, that's kind of interesting. So essentially, these were check boxes of, did they complete all these reports and steps? And as I said, the only one to not complete it this year was Sand City on their maintenance of effort. And Teresa, would you remind us what their situation was?
I'm going to defer to Mike on this, if you don't mind.
Yes, please, Mike.
Yes, essentially the city did not spend enough from their general funds on transportation to meet their maintenance of effort level. So the Measure X policies call for their Measure X disbursements to be withheld until they are able to make up that gap in their maintenance of effort.
And did they explain why? What was going on there in Sand City?
I believe it was, they did have some staffing turnover. So I think there were some issues related to that. I think there were some issues related to COVID-19 and just revenues being down. So we did have a discussion with the city about the steps that they would need to take to remediate the issue and get back into compliance. And they're still working on that. They have not submitted any additional information to us.
Okay.
Barbara, if I could just add, the city's baseline year that we use as the comparison for this maintenance of effort, they did spend a fair amount more money than maybe they would have normally. So they have a fairly high bar to reach for their maintenance of effort. And they, in talking with city staff, that may have been miscalculated, and they're trying to see if they can evaluate what went into that baseline year. It's quite a bit more than the amount of Measure X funds they get annually. They also have to use that same amount for their SB1 state funds. So it really is up to them working it out and getting something that's acceptable to the state if they were to modify it before we would consider accepting a different number. So that's part of what's ongoing right now, and the city's evaluating what their data is.
All right, thanks for that added explanation. So this is our report. This is our audit that will then be presented to the board of directors. And as Teresa mentioned, the sort of punishment, if you will, on that maintenance of effort, and hopefully they can resolve all that, is that the funds will be withheld until that's resolved. And please correct me if I've said that incorrectly. Committee members, is there any
No,
further
that's correct.
comments? That is correct. Okay, good. Committee members, Kevin or Paula or Rich?
Yes, I would like to comment about this, and it's the same thing I've said before. I believe, following many local governments across the state, that this might be the best, most effective oversight committee in the state. And one of the many things that leads to that is this accountability chart that is put up every year. And I remember the first year this was done, some of the local governments complaining about it because they weren't used to this kind of oversight, and they didn't like having a no or a red block on this chart. And I'm saving each chart each year, and I think it's very useful. And my vision is still every year to have 100% yes or green blocks on this. And never having somebody in Monterey County say to me, why did you support that Measure X thing? We have no idea where the money is going. That is, almost a third of the people, voters in 2016, still voted against this for one reason or another. And it was one of my thinking that we would attempt to eliminate any of that criticism. And I think that's been done. And I hope when the final report comes out in 2047, that the Oversight Committee and TMC at that point is still making these charts, because I think they're very effective.
All right, Paula?
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in response to what Kevin was saying. I agree 100%. And I think the thing that I was most positive about our charts is that they have been, and I think they will continue to be presented in a positive fashion. Even though we are saying that there's still a problem with Sand City, I think that the overall report and the overall chart indicates a positive note, a positive move on our part and on the part of the jurisdictions. And I think it's important to keep that. We don't want this to be punitive, though it is, but we want it to appear that the positive things are happening that we hoped would happen with Measure X funds. So I'm really grateful to the committee for helping to keep that positive note moving forward.
Okay, any other comments or reactions to the audit report or the annual report as well? Okay, seeing none, I'll just wrap that up by saying, Teresa, I also really appreciate the annual report, how clear and simple it is, and project-based and story-based. And man, that woman's got some cute kids on the front cover.
Seriously, photogenic. And
Thanks, Maria, for loaning your little future models there. Okay, then we will move on. We don't need to vote on this, right?
No,
Just
no, it's just
receiving
a
the presentation. Okay, then let's move on to our next item. If I can find my agenda back. Yes, next is to receive an update on the TAMC Title VI and the Language Assistance Plan for 2021 to 2024, and then complete the Title VI Committee Representation Survey. And Madeline, you are leading us in that, right?
Yes, that would be me. Can you hear me okay on the other end?
You sound good.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Madeline Jacobson, and I'm a transportation planner at TAMC. TMC is currently in the process of updating what's called our Title VI plan. So during this afternoon's meeting, I'm going to provide an overview on Title VI and request your participation in a brief survey for the plan. So for some background, Title VI is a federal requirement that mandates that no person shall be discriminated against on the grounds of race, color, national origin, or be excluded from participation or denied benefits under any program or activity that receives federal funding. So TAMC's Title VI plan serves as the comprehensive guide for all Title VI related activities conducted by the agency. In 2012, the Federal Transit Administration set up new guidelines for Caltrans, which requires that any subrecipient of a Caltrans planning grant submit their revised Title VI plan every 3 years. So TAMC is a subrecipient of federal funds and both Caltrans planning grants. So we are required to submit an updated plan every 3 years. And our last update was completed in 2018. So the updated Title VI plan will cover the 3-year period from 2021 through 2024, and will emphasize our Title VI processes and procedures. And what that includes is our public outreach techniques and innovative strategies to reach our region's populations with limited English proficiency, and to increase public involvement in all programs and projects that use federal funding. So TAMC's Title VI plan is currently being updated to reflect the latest census data available on demographics and language proficiency. As indicated in the staff report, updated language proficiency data indicates that Spanish, Tagalog, and Korean meet the federal threshold of safe harbor languages for the region. The updated plan is expected to be approved at TAMC's June 2021 board meeting. As a reporting requirement under Title VI, TAMC must include a table in the plan that depicts racial demographics of non-elected committee members, which is why I'm here today to request your participation in the representation survey. So the survey was included as a web link in the agenda packet, and I will also display a QR code on my screen in a moment for you to access it directly on your computer. And I'll send the link again through the chat, and you only have to complete it once. So that is the content of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions from committee members.
I'm just curious, Madeline, when you talk about Spanish, Tagalog, and Korean as the languages, how does that then in practicality get implemented? Does that mean you've got to have everything translated in those languages? That mean you've got to be able to answer the phone in those languages? How does that get implemented in practice?
Sure, great question. So the threshold of a safe harbor language is defined by the Federal Transit Administration as a population where 5% or 1,000 persons, whichever is less, is eligible to be served by the work of the agency. And so the safe harbor languages mean that any vital documents must be available in those languages. And so that includes documents that affect access to, retention in, termination, or exclusion from a recipient's, which is TAMC's program services or benefits. And so that could be things like our complaint forms under the Title VI program and any written notices of rights. And TAMC also is required to have the capacity to translate any document that's requested to be in another language to be produced and provided in that language.
And you all have a contract with a firm to do that?
We have an on-call contract for if somebody calls in. And we also are able to work with translation services to get any hard documents provided in an alternative language.
Okay, great. Janet, you've got your hand up.
Which census data are you using? Since the 2020 census is going to be available until September?
Yeah. So I'm opening up my data file. So we're using updated American Community Survey data. And I can tell you, so it is the ACS 5-year estimates from 2019.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments, reactions? Okay, and are you all getting access to the survey link? Yeah, I'm waiting for you to pop it into the chat for me.
I'm doing that right now here.
Okay,
There you are.
all right. So everyone on the committee, alternates as well, need to complete the survey, right? Before we finish our meeting today.
We strongly recommend that you complete the survey, yes.
Okay, you're not going to force us to.
Not mandated, but we highly encourage it.
Strongly recommend and encourage it. Okay, wonderful. Norm, did you have any?
I can't find the raised hand up, but I'll just say that, I just did it QR code on my phone. It took like 3 seconds to finish. It's very simple. Thank you.
Great, good to hear.
Madeline, it's like 4 questions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just 4 straightforward questions. Circle the dot.
Yeah.
Okay, terrific. All right, any other questions or comments on this item? If not, then we are ready for announcements.
Barbara,
Yeah?
just one follow-up to this. If anybody's not been able to do it, and I'll send out an email after this meeting for those who are not here, but if anyone's had a problem with the link or has any questions, then certainly let me know and we can resend the links back out to you. Okay?
Sure thing. One quick question. Did we do this last year or is this new?
Not last year, no. We actually, our last Title VI plan was published in 2018. And this is the first plan that we're adding the XTalk to that required committee table, which is why it's probably the first time you're hearing about this particular table.
Okay, got it. I thought it sounded new. All right, great. And glad to hear that you've got all that language accessibility built into your service as well. That's important. Okay, seeing no other comments or reactions or questions to this item, thank you so much, Madeline. And we'll proceed to announcements. Does anyone have any announcements? Or can we also ask questions of the staff? Is that appropriate? And Debbie,
Sure.
we'll start with you.
Okay, I'm on my computer, so I'm not always as used to working everything. So I know that we're not going to be meeting for a couple of months, and so I wanted to let you all know now that that I announced to the TMC board last month, and you'll see probably something coming out from them later this month, that I am actually going to be retiring this year.
No way.
Just so you know, it's somewhat of an early retirement. My husband just retired last year, and I'm going to be increasing some of my volunteer activities with Rotary in particular. I wanted to, in particular, announce it to this committee. It's probably going to be around August until we get a new person in, because you all have been such a big part of my career journey, and without you all being not just a great oversight committee and providing confidence that the public needs, but also many of you being there beforehand and helping to urge us to become a self-help county, and to working with us to craft the expenditure plan and such. And $117 million so far, that's just huge. And it's not an easy thing to ask people to make that contribution. But if they see it making changes meaningfully in their community, I think they really feel like it's worth it. So I didn't want to miss the opportunity to thank you all for helping to create what I really consider as the biggest success in my tenure here. And as you all know, it takes a village, and you all are the village. So thank you so much for the relationships and their collaboration and your diligence and everyone coming to all of these meetings. So thank you so much.
What a blow. I wasn't expecting that announcement. But at the same time, well-deserved milestone in your life and in your contributions to transportation in this county. And yeah, that 117 million is a nice, you should always retire on a high point, right? So well played, Debbie Hale. Yeah, well, and I expect Teresa, there will, and Mike and Todd, there will be some sort of going away recognition for all the contributions you've made to us. Something to be planned.
We'll have to definitely plan something. So everybody get your COVID shots so we can do this in vaccines. Can I just add on to this? I think that Debbie's recognition of this committee is so important, and particularly her work, because she helped lead this process, and so that we could have Measure X passed and supported by the voters. And I appreciate that. And I'm going to ask for some support from all of you, because I've been seeing a lot of messages on Nextdoor, and there are people that are out there saying, oh, they noticed that Seaside has all this street improvements, and somebody said, oh, well, how did they get it? And people are saying, oh, it's because of the cannabis dollars. And so I weighed in and said, no, this is Measure X and SB1 dollars. So if you hear stuff like that, let's just continue this process and this legacy that Debbie helped lead by pushing back and reminding people that no, this is the results of Measure X and SB1, and the fact that the cities have gotten 60% of that money to make improvements. And now we're seeing those tangible improvements happen. And I don't want people to lose sight of the fact that it's this committee and your work that made that happen, and not the cannabis dollars that are now coming into some jurisdictions. So on that note, I just wanted to bring that up and to let you know that I'm doing what I can, but I need your support to help get that message out.
Great points, Teresa, and thank you for telling us about that. I'm not a Nextdoor junkie, but I will take whatever opportunity I can to instill facts and information into public discourse. Lord knows we need more of that. I'm not sure who had their hand up first. Was it Kevin or Norm?
Norm had it up first.
Okay, thank you. And, Debbie, say it isn't so. I have to say, I've dealt with a lot of transportation issues through my career, and through the Prunedale project and the south of Salinas Highway 101 projects and other things that we've been involved in together for the ag community. You've really stood strong in making sure that the community values come first. And it was a pleasure to work with you on the Measure X and getting that put together. So you will definitely be missed, and we appreciate all your efforts here, particularly for what you've left as a legacy in this county. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, Barbara, my comment is this committee did something that some people are very leery about. There are 20 members and 20 alternates on this oversight committee. It's huge. And a lot of people are saying, what oversight committee meetings should only have a few members? There's no way you're going to be able to deal with such a big committee. But if I remember right at the time, it was argued, you know what, the bigger the committee is, the more you'll get community support for this in the fifth try to get this sales tax passed. And it did pass. And as far as I'm concerned, you've got up to 40 people going to these meetings who are leaders in their communities and going back out there and telling people that Measure X money is being spent well, and that the community has an oversight role on how things are being done. I thought that was and you know what, maybe it just happens to be the dynamics of Monterey County that allowed this to happen. But I'm very impressed that such a large committee does such a good job. In fact, I think that its size to some extent actually makes it more effective.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. I think Chris had his hand, and then Sean.
I just wanted to say a few words about Debbie. She's a great friend of mine. She asked me to join this committee, and at first I was like, oh, another committee, but I really enjoy myself on this committee. And Debbie, your legacy will live forever. And thank you for everything you've done for Monterey County and in Salinas, and to a great Rotarian. And you will be missed. I'll miss you, having not seen you on this meeting. So it's been a pleasure and honor. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Sean?
Yeah, and I just wanted to echo a few of those things. And this is the funniest place, this committee, because this is where I just find myself agreeing with Kevin Dayton, for this is my quarterly appointment to agree with Kevin. And you could put that the Measure X, Kevin Dayton's favorite tax, And I think kind of what Kevin was saying about the breadth of this committee, I think it has been its strength. And I think it's been the way that TAMC crafted all of the plan and the inclusion of TAMC's plan for all of that work that was what made people realize that there is something in this for everyone, and then it made it so inclusive. And so the campaign was inclusive, the expenditures are inclusive, and the committee's inclusive, and I'm proud to be a part of it. And I think Debbie had a very, very large role in making this committee what it is, and I thank her for that.
Great, thank you, Sean. Janet?
Well, I have worked with Debbie for over 20 years.
Right in the
Both
middle.
as a professional, when I was working at the Air District, and as a volunteer working on all the pre-Measure X efforts. And Debbie she is transportation planning in Monterey County, and we're really going to miss her expertise and the way she has worked with the community over the years. So best of luck, Debbie.
Thanks, Janet. Anyone else? I would just underscore a couple of those thoughts too. I've heard this from, I think it was Sam Teal when I first started at the aquarium and started going and paying attention to Highway 156 as it affected our self-interest at the aquarium. And Sam Teal, again, somebody on the opposite end of the partisan spectrum from me, but noting that, this is one of the best government agencies that I've ever encountered. This is one of the best government agencies in Monterey County. And that has a lot to do with leadership, right? You have structures, you have rules, you have policies and procedures, but leadership is something unique to any organization. And I too have come to admire and recognize with great respect. And as a government junkie myself, it's very true. This is a model agency, and the way it's operated, the kind of culture you've created. And yeah, Monterey County is huge, right? And it's got so many different jurisdictions and interests and sectors to it. And we have our divisions naturally in some ways because of the diversity. But this is that agency that brings it all together. And it really does have to do with Debbie, your leadership and your ability to craft a team that reflects that leadership and reflects that culture of. And Sean, that word inclusive is a very appropriate word, not something we see enough of in our modern day and a lot of other government public discourse situations. So yeah, I'm ready for you to like write the book, Debbie, and go on the road and train other agencies and others on how do you do it? How do you do good governance in an inclusive way across so many different diverse and sometimes competing interests and different political parties or political spectrum as well. So thank you so much. And do let us know when we can, publicly have a celebration of your leadership with our various constituencies with us too. I think that would be very appropriate and needed too. Good. I was going to raise a question too. Has anybody else sort of comment on that? I was going to shift our gear just one degree. All right, if this is appropriate, but if not, maybe we can schedule it for the next agenda. And I'm just sort of curious how the staff or the TAMC board are thinking about the potential of a federal infrastructure bill and what that might mean for our local projects and our ability to leverage our funds with potential federal funds. And of course, top of my mind is 156 and the huge price tag that we've yet to figure out how to pay for. So those are my interests today. Is that appropriate to ask that question, how you all are thinking about it?
Todd, Debbie, what do you think of maybe having a presentation to this committee in August? That's when our next meeting will be.
In August?
Yes.
Well, and that is very interesting. I'll give you a little brief sort of thing, and then maybe we'll know more in August. What is it that they say, that the president proposes and the Congress disposes? And so, the president has put out his proposal for an infrastructure bill, but I'm curious to see what it ends up looking like in the Congress. And I'm not sure if there's a House bill out there. Christina's not on the call, I don't think. So we'll have to see. He has taken a completely different tack on how to fund it, which is raising taxes on people based on income, not based on the gas tax, which has very strong opposition. So that's an interesting way to get around the notion that, well, you've got to pay for it somehow. I would imagine, though, that if there's a new federal infrastructure bill, or at least I would hope that it would flow more money through the formula programs that we already get. That would be the best outcome, with perhaps a couple of earmarks along the way. We actually know a little bit more about earmarks in that we've made a proposal to our Congressman Panetta for 3 projects, I guess really 2 projects. There's a bunch of different moving pieces, but because the numbers aren't expected to be that big, we put in for 101 South of Salinas, and we put in for Highway 68, and they're saying expect $1 million or 2 million. So projects that are already in the pipeline. It would have to be a huge sea change to get funding to bring that 156 project for widening up to the top. And I also think that, or into the pipeline. I also think that maybe something we could talk a little bit about at the next meeting is the climate action plan that the governor has proposed, which would possibly shift funding away from some of the highway improvements to other modes. And we're pretty multimodal, and most of our projects are kind of safety and goods movement oriented, but we want to make sure that those don't get left behind. But that kind of a shift is widely expected to make it harder and harder to get funding for new lanes, new travel lanes. And so that doesn't bode well for a 156 project either. So that's kind of where things sit. We're all kind of holding our breath thinking, is there really going to be an infrastructure bill or not? And if there is, please flow it through to us and don't put it in a bunch of little tiny project programs that we have to compete for. So we could talk about it more in August to see where things land.
That'd be great. Todd, do you want to add anything?
I'll probably just stop there. I think it'd be good in August to have a discussion about both the federal and the state cap tie, which is what Debbie was referring to with the state proposal to shift some of the funding emphasis. So August would be a good time for that.
Okay, that'd be helpful. Yeah.
And I'll plan on putting them on the agenda.
Thank
And
you.
maybe one thing to stick on there, there is the 4TAG program, which is I think I don't know what the current price tag is, but we had assumed 40 million back when Measure X was up. Is it legal to get some of that climate action money? Should it come with those strings and use it for that and shift Measure X funding that was originally designated for that elsewhere? Is there a creative way to do other projects and connect to 4TAG and keep the original voter intent? These are some things I would be interested in, because I think we should take, if it does, the problem with federal funding is it often comes with a lot of strings attached. I like to figure out how to use them without being constrained.
I think it would be good timing to come back on the 4TAG. I would be hesitant to shift money away from any one of our Measure X projects, especially that one, because we know the price tag's gone up. Price tag goes up on all the projects, however. But that said, sure, it does represent an opportunity for projects like the 4TAG, like the Highway 1 busway. And, even possibly Highway 68, because it's not looking at widening, it's looking at roundabouts, which will make things safer. So yeah, it's
And
probably
reduce
good
greenhouse
timing.
gas emissions too, with the roundabouts, one of the, so, and also you have the East Alisol BRT that's beginning to, in the preliminary stages. So there may be some opportunities there. I'd like to hear about them.
All right, till August on that point then. Any other announcements? Okay, I just have one more. I know, speaking of the BRT, I believe their EIR is completed and will be presented to the MST Board of Directors in May. I know that I've been asked to take a look at that and write a letter of support from our constituency standpoint. So that's one project that's moving along. And then lastly, if there's not any other comments, I would just underscore back to Teresa's appeal to us as Measure X Oversight Committee members to take that role of ambassador. I find myself doing that here and there, explaining to people what's going on here or there, or see that project that was Measure X. That really is a powerful way that we can just reinforce where this funding came from and why it came from, and reinforce that this was voters deciding to tax themselves for this set of priorities. So here you see it in action. It's not an abstract idea anymore. It's in reality. So I do encourage you all to, whenever you have a chance, to be an ambassador for this work.
Thanks, Barbara.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, we are adjourned within less than an hour. I think that's the first Zoom meeting I've had in a long time that's less than an hour. So thank you all. And thank you again, Subcommittee on the Audit, Paula and Kevin and Rick, for helping put that together, and Teresa for your work to execute on bringing it to print.
You're welcome. See everybody in August. Debbie, bye on your last.
Barbara.
Talk
Take
to
care,
you.
everyone.
Thank you all.